Okay, well, it's so great to see a nice crowd like this, and welcome. The Chamber of Commerce decided one of the things that they could do to help our community and its citizens is to start having events such as these. And this is a part of a series of town hall meetings. We had one yesterday on affordable housing in Citrus Springs, and we wanted to have this on growth. We know there's a lot of people have a lot of concerns about the amount of growth that's taking place. They're wondering if the county is prepared for that growth. And we thought it would be good to kind of talk that out with some experts of what is coming, what is forecasted to come, how the county is dealing with that. And so we have a panel of experts up here. We will, as time allows, take some questions. So tonight we aim to shed light on the data-driven facts that this growth, alongside the current tools in place and actions being taken to manage that growth in a sustainable way. Before we begin, I would like to thank our event sponsors, Duke Energy, Dr. Desai, Crystal Harley-Davidson, and of course the Chamber of Commerce, College of Central Florida, and Citrus County Board of County Commissioners has been very generous in helping us with all of this. We will start a presentation with Sheridan Morby, Senior Research Economist from the Florida Chamber Foundation, who will provide real-time data and research projections on topics such as local population growth, workforce needs, tax revenues, and housing issues. We're so lucky to have somebody of her caliber down from Tallahassee. Following Sheridan's presentation, a panel of local and state leaders, co-moderated by Jerry Mulligan. Y'all remember Jerry, don't you? Jerry was looking for a job, so we paid him $10 tonight. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to a productive and enlightening discussion, and it's just that, it's a discussion. We want to have a discussion with our community. At this time, I would like to invite the chair of the board for the Citrus County Chamber of Commerce, retired Master Chief Debbie Riley.
Welcome, everyone. Sheridan Morby serves as a senior research economist for the Florida Chamber Foundation. Sheridan's experience has spanned many subjects, specializing in labor market and workforce research. In her role as senior research economist, she oversees the foundation's numerous research projects, the Florida Scorecard Board, and provides research insights for the Florida 2030 Blueprint and associated goals. Sheridan provides economic analysis to local chambers, developers, and other key members and partners of the Florida Chamber Foundation. Sheridan attended Florida State University and holds a Master's in Applied Economics and a Bachelor's in Economics and Statistics. So, Sheridan?
Awesome. So as she said, I'm Sheridan Morby. I'm the Senior Research Economist for the Florida Chamber Foundation. So I look a lot at state-level data, but specifically here I want to dive in. I'm going to give you some context of what's happening at the state level, but also dive into Citrus County specifically. I've looked at the trends in Citrus County, especially in relationship to population growth and GDP growth, which measures the size of our economy. So just to set to high-level setting, the Florida Chamber Foundation, if you don't know what that is the research arm of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. We're very future-focused. Specifically, we're looking out to Florida in 2030, because we know that Florida is growing rapidly and we want that to be good growth. So our overarching goal is to grow Florida to be a top 10 global economy by 2030. And that sounds like a crazy goal, something that is not going to happen. But right now, if Florida were a country, we'd be the 15th largest economy in the world. So Florida is not just competing on a national scale, we're competing on a global scale. As we look ahead to 2030, we know that we're going to see 2.8 million net new residents in the state. 1.34 million net new jobs are going to be needed to accommodate that growth. There's going to be 40 million more annual visitors on top of what we're already seeing come to the state. We actually have a record year for visitors in 2023. And then there's going to be 2.5 million more drivers on Florida's roads. So breaking down that growth a little bit more. So as I said, there's going to be 2.8 million net new residents in Florida by 2030. If you look at where that's broken down, the top projected increases, just by number of people, are in the counties you'd probably expect down south: Miami-Dade, Broward County. In Citrus County, there's going to be about 26.2 thousand new residents by 2030. That's 34th in the state. And it's a growth rate of about 14%, and that's 31st in the state. So just to give you an idea, when we talk about population growth is really a double-edged sword. There's positives to it and there's negatives to it. One example, just as you think about it, population growth is only a negative if you're not prepared for it. And so that's going to be kind of a common theme as I talk about this population growth, is the fact that if you're prepared for it, it's a really positive thing. And you can see that across the board in Florida. Mark Wilson, who's our CEO at the Chamber, talks a lot about the idea of we're seeing schools built and renovated right now that the day that they open, they have portables outside. And so you're seeing these schools being built that are prepared for the growth the day that they open. And that's a really valuable example, because as we talk about this population growth, that's what you want to avoid. That's how you can keep that population growth as a positive thing, not a negative thing. So looking at some of the migration that's happened in Florida in recent years, so Florida is #1 in the country for net income migration. So that takes into account people moving into Florida, the income they brought with them, and the people who left Florida. So $39.2 billion was brought into Florida over a year period. That breaks down to $4.48 million per hour that has moved into Florida. We've gained it from 48 of the 50 states. We've only lost income to Tennessee and Wyoming, but we have lost people to 14 states. So that means, on average, people moving into Florida have higher incomes than those who are leaving, especially to states like North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia. So it is that double-edged sword of higher income is good. It means that there's higher spending, it fuels the economy, diversifies the economy, but it also can lead to higher prices. And that's why accounting for it in inflation or in infrastructure, housing, things like that is so important. Looking specifically at Citrus County, it's also seeing rapid income migration. So there was $155.7 million over that year period moving into just this county. It's actually taking into account people who left this county as well. Just to give you a little bit of context, that's $17,000 per hour that moved into this county alone. And if this county was a state, it'd be the 24th highest state for net income migration. It's greater than Hawaii, New Mexico, and Mississippi, and many other states. So it's the reality in Florida, and it's also very much the reality in this county. So a little bit about the people who are leaving. As I mentioned, we're seeing high levels of net migration, but we're actually seeing some people leaving the state as well. If you look at what's happening in terms of who those people are, it gives us an idea of what some of the pressure points are in Florida, which then is opportunity, where can we be making changes in the state and the county to kind of combat that group of people who are leaving. So what do these people look like? So they're about 32 years old on the median, which sounds really young, but it's actually the second highest median age for people leaving in the country. Nevada is the only one with an older age. The percentage leaving the state that are 65 to 74 is the fourth highest in the country. And so you can see it actually is an older population that's leaving Florida, but something that might be happening here is that 47% of people who are leaving Florida are homeowners, and that's higher than the national level. And that probably means that people who moved into Florida when housing was a little more affordable, they took advantage of the housing market, now can sell their home for a much higher price and are leaving Florida. And again, it's not a negative. We look at this data, and what's so important about this data is it helps us to see where the opportunity is, and we are armed with that to be able to make the changes. And so as I talk about population projections and keeping track of this data, a lot of the data I talk about is backed by research, it's used by the government, and that's kind of where we can see what the growth is going to be and be able to account for that. So looking at specifically Citrus County's growth over the last 5 years, something's happening that's different in Citrus County than at the state level. The major headline at the state level is Florida's aging, which is true in a sense. It's seen a lot of population growth in the older age ranges. But in Citrus County, the most rapid population growth is actually in the workforce age range. About 30 to 45 is the fastest growing age range in this area. So it doesn't mean there's necessarily a bad problem in the Florida level, a great thing happening here. There is a great thing happening here, but it's just different opportunities, and you can't just apply the headlines that are happening in Florida to every county. This county is very different from Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade is very different from Leon County, where I live. It varies a lot, and so you have to look at the specific data. And so we can see that there is positive things happening. The people who are moving into this area are the workforce population, which means they're very directly going to influence the economy, going to diversify the economy, if they have the proper housing infrastructure to be able to live here and work here. A lot of the data that I talk about is tracked in the Florida scorecard. That was a little bit about demographics, but I'm going to touch on some high-level economics as well. And so everything I talk about is tracked about on the floridascorecard.org. It's an online free resource. It has everything from job statistics to poverty rates, third grade reading scores at the state and the county level. So if you leave here and you're curious about what is the percentage of third graders reading at grade level in my county, you can find it on the scorecard, the resource. So I just like to put that out there because I'm just going to touch very high level things, but you can see them there on the scorecard. GDP I touched on a little bit earlier. So GDP is gross domestic product. Basically, it measures the size of the economy in dollars. So this is Florida, the high level. Our GDP in Florida is $1.62 trillion. It's the fourth highest in the country. It's below California, Texas, and New York, but it's growing most rapidly. So the size of our economy has grown by nearly 41% over the last 4 years, greater than California, Texas, New York. Illinois is the fifth largest economy, and they're nowhere near on our heels in terms of the pace of GDP growth. And a lot of this has to do with population. That 2019 to quarter four of 2023, which is the most recently available data, that covers a lot of COVID, the people that we saw moving in at a rapid pace, and so that could be the reason for a lot of this economic growth. And you might be thinking, okay, this is measured in dollars, we've had so much inflation, is that just what's going on here? But even if you adjust for the inflation, the size of the economy has grown by nearly 19%, and it's still number one in the country in terms of the growth. We also can see how diverse our economy is when we look at GDP. So the growth of transportation, professional services, and retail trade industries are all greater than 50%. So you might think of Florida as a tourism state, and that's true. We have the most overseas visitors in the country, but we're more than just a tourism state. Transportation, professional services, retail trade, all of those are seeing rapid growth, especially as population comes in, especially as workforce population comes in, which is what Citrus County is seeing. GDP growth, also, as I said, is closely tied with population growth, but in Citrus County, we're seeing the phenomenon where it's not just, okay, GDP is growing as population is growing. GDP, which again is just the size of the economy, is growing exponentially faster than population growth here. So over a 5-year period, the size of, or the population grew by about 10%, but over that same time period, the GDP, the size of the economy, the money being made in this area grew by over 50%. And again, if you adjust for inflation, it's about 24.6%. And you can see that the graph kind of skyrockets around 2020, which is when population growth hit a new high. And so that is just growing exponentially. So the size of the economy per person in this area is getting greater and greater, and that's what we refer to as the productivity. So the productivity of people in Citrus County and in Florida in general, it's happening in Florida too, is getting greater and greater as the population grows. It's not as simple as population is growing, so the money is growing. It's actually an exponential impact. Workforce is a big piece of the puzzle here. The foundation of our economy is the workforce. There's a couple different things happening at the state level and then in this county. So at the state level, we actually have a workforce shortage. For every 100 open jobs, there's only 86 Floridians who are looking for work. And that means that Florida's workforce needs are greater than the available workers. The unemployment rate is ticking up a little bit, but that's pretty natural. Natural unemployment, normal unemployment rate is between 3 to 4%. So at the state level, I'm not too worried about that. That just creates a flexible and stable labor market. In Citrus County, it is higher. It's closer to 5%, which is not the highest in the state by any means. It's still pretty average compared to the rest of the counties. But there's just a different challenge here. So you have more unemployed people seeking work for every 100 open jobs. There's more people in the labor market than there are available jobs. But that also means there's a lot of opportunity here. You look at the state level and they're seeing not enough people able to work at the jobs that are needed. And in Citrus County, there's available workers, there are people who are available to work, and so there's opportunity to expand the business community, especially as more people move here and there's more of a tax base to spend at those at those businesses as well. And just one note here, this data is gathered by online job postings, so this doesn't actually even capture all the open jobs in your area. The unemployment disparity is probably a little bit less. Probably not as drastic as that 263 for every 100, because not every job is posted online. Rural communities typically don't have as many jobs posted online, so that could be part of the puzzle here as well. Looking at workforce, a big part as we look ahead to 2030 is having a ready and available workforce. And there's a lot of mismatch between the people who might work here, the people who graduate here, and the skills that are needed for the jobs. And so we have our Future of Work initiative, and something that it focuses on from a data perspective is the top projected careers by 2030. So that list is the top 10 in this area specifically that are needed by 2030. And this accounts for those that might have a lower than median wage. So those are taken out of the equation here. This is jobs that are high paying careers and are truly career paths when you look at the data. And what's super interesting is that only, I believe, 3 actually require a 4-year degree. The rest of the 7 all require either just a high school degree or GED, post-secondary, or an associate's degree. And so when you look at numbers, it's on the scorecard, the number of people without a high school diploma in Citrus County, there's about 1,600 between just the ages of 18 to 24, and then about 12,000 25 plus. So that's a big part of the workforce that's untapped, because they could be just getting their GED and then be in these high-paying career paths, or just a couple more years of their education. But there's a lot of misconceptions about that, so I'd be remiss to talk about workforce and not talk about the fact that there's a bunch of misconceptions about the amount of time and money you could be putting into your education and the payout that you can be getting in terms of the careers that are out there and the careers that are in demand. Looking at inflation, this is a very big topic for consumers, for businesses especially. Inflation in the US has been declining, actually. It might not feel like that, but since about 2021, there was a peak of 9% inflation, which is incredibly high. And so we are seeing a decline. We're seeing that inflation cool a little bit. About 3.3% at the national level, 3.2% in the South, so a little bit lower when you get closer to Florida. They don't track it in just Florida, but if you look at the southern region, which we're in, it's about 3.2%. As I said, feels high. You're seeing it in the prices at the grocery store, in the housing as well. But it's actually much lower than it was just a few years ago. It is cooling as we look at population growth, slowing actually a little bit over that time period, which is lowering inflation as well. We can also look at it by category. Things like food, energy, those are very volatile. So when you look at the inflation rates there, I wouldn't get too scared of them. They can go from positive to negative, back and forth, month to month, because food prices, gas prices change very frequently. But housing is the big one there that always has a high inflation level, at least in recent months. So again, this just finds, looking at the data, you can see that that's kind of where that pressure point is. And so it was so great to hear that y'all had a discussion yesterday about affordable housing, because that really seeps into a lot of this, is when there's available affordable housing, that is such a driver for the workforce. Speaking of housing, just a little overview of the housing market in Citrus County. So this, as just a reminder, 14.4% projected growth in new residents by 2030, and 31st for growth in the state. This is more of a buyer's market compared to renters. So there's 85.4% of people in Citrus County own their home, and that's the second highest in the state. And then the median single-family home price is $279,000. That might not be believable. You might think it's much higher, but it is the lowest, the second lowest in the state in terms of all the metro areas. It actually declined year over year. If you look back to 2020, 2019, it's much higher than it was then, but year over year it is declining, because what we're seeing in the housing market is a stabilizing of the housing market. Prices are not going to get lower, but they're not going to get significantly higher in the next few months, because you're seeing more active listings. One part of that is housing starts. So that means a new housing unit being built. So as our population has grown and population in this area has grown, the housing starts have met that demand. And so if you look at the annual housing starts in 2022, the number of new buildings that were made in 2022, specifically single-family homes, multifamily, residential housing, they're 12.5 times the amount that there was in 2012. So they're making these new housing, specifically in this county, is keeping up with demand in that way. It's the 11th largest increase in annual housing starts of all the counties. So you're seeing that is a better pattern here than happening in some other areas like Miami-Dade, Broward. They're having different struggles. You can also look at tax revenue. This kind of illustrates what happens in terms of what money is going back into the economy, because we don't have income tax in Florida, which is great, but it means that sales tax is kind of where we look to see what's happening with the tax base. So what income do people have? How are they spending? And again, like I talked about, population, economy size, the economy growing rapidly compared to population, that happens here too in terms of inflation. So the sales tax revenue increased over the last couple of years by nearly 40%, and inflation only increased by like 20-ish%. And so that means that there really has been an increase in spending, an increase in sales tax revenue. It's not just because of inflation. It is happening as the population is increasing, especially. You also don't have the numbers up here, but you also are seeing median wages increase along that same line. They're not just increasing with inflation, they are increasing slightly above inflation, staying on pace. And again, this is the high-level data, so it might not be personal experience, person to person, but on the whole, what's happening in the economy in this area is you're seeing those things catch up. Just last thing I want to touch on, and this is high-level Florida forecast. So at the Florida Chamber Foundation, we release a forecast for 2024. And we like to stay up with that, up to date with that, because we rely a lot on this data for making decisions and as we look ahead to the economy. So we want to be sure that we're keeping track of what's happening and making sure that the way we're interpreting this is accurate. So looking at some of the updates we've had, they have been pretty on par. So we expect annual GDP growth to be slower this year, so the size of the economy to grow slower, but still stably. And right now, a slow but stable economy is a really strong economy in this country, and that's what Florida has. That's what this county is seeing too. And then we expect there to be small interest rate cuts in the second half of 2024, and that means just that the economy is going to be stimulated some, and that's probably going to happen because inflation is increasing. So you can expect to see the economy be stimulated in the second half of this year. And we expect slower but steady population growth, so it is slowing down from what you've seen, but it's still very positive. The median sale prices at the state level and housing prices are about where we expected, and we're seeing that at county level too. And then there's an increase in active listings in the housing market, which is why those prices are staying pretty consistent. And then finally, job growth, it's about on par. Again, slower job growth, but stable job growth, which is really important in this country right now. So that's all I have. It's a lot of information all at once, but I'd be happy to answer any questions later on here after if anybody has any specific questions. Thank you.
Sure, and that was excellent. We really appreciate your work. Here's the bad news for everyone. There will now be a written test. Just passed along. There's a lot of data there, and it's important for us as we talk about this really important subject to try to digest it and to understand that what we do, we as a community have the right to set the strategies of growth in our community. And never before has there been a discussion in Citrus County like this tonight. I'm proud to be part of this. I'm going to ask our panelists now to come on up and take your seats. What we're going to do is we're going to spend about an hour with our panelists, and we'll be talking about these issues. We'll take a short break, 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we will go through questions for the panelists. We are incredibly fortunate, and again, I've probably attended every touring meeting that has been at Citrus County over the last 40 years. This is not one of them. This is an incredible meeting where we have we have the best expert panel I've ever seen put together in this community. So hats off to the Chamber for doing a really good job, but hats off to you for taking the time out to come down and show that you care enough about your community that you want to be involved in this. So let me just introduce the panelists to begin with. We have with us Florida House of Representative Ralph Masulo. Ralph has been serving Citrus County for 8 years. I'm sorry to say that he term limits out, so this is his last year as our state representative. He's done an incredible job. Next we have Scott Ebert. Scott is filling in tonight for Thomas Kennedy, who is the school board chairman. At the last minute, he got taken out, and Scott was nice enough to come and fill in for us. The school board recommended that Scott knows more about what's going on in the system than most anyone. So thank you. Next, we have Linda Stockton. She is the vice president and CEO of Tampa General Hospital, based right now at Crystal River. They have a facility also in Lecanto. They do, Tampa General has just taken over this facility and is making lots of changes. Two of these ladies, and how important is it that we have two ladies running the large hospitals? We have Dr. Lisa Newby. She is the CEO of HCA Hospital at Citrus Memorial in Inverness. One of the, we know how big healthcare is as part of as importance to our economy in Citrus County, and a big part of that is nursing. Next, we have Becky Beatty. She is the Director of Nursing Operations at Clear Sky Rehabilitation Hospital. We next have, I believe he's considered the Dean of the Realtors in Citrus County, which means he sold my building in 1984. That's how far back you go. Jim Morton is a broker at Century 21 Morton Real Estate in Inverness. So Jim, welcome. We have with us Dr. Dennis Grilla. He is from Crystal River. He has been involved in Citrus County for many, many years. He can offer us the physician perspective on what health and the economy needs. Dr. Grilla. Next, we have Russell Hallenbach. He is the vice chairman and CEO of Tibbetts Lumber. And that is one of the manufacturing businesses we have in Citrus County. That's one thing we don't have a whole lot of. And we're happy that he agreed to be with us tonight and participate in the panel. Thank you. Next, we have Danielle Ruiz, Economic Development Industry Recruiter for Duke Energy. Everybody knows Duke Energy, one of our largest employers in the county, and we welcome. Thank you. Tourism is a huge business in Citrus County. Michael Madicky is a board member of the Tourist Development Council in Citrus County, and he helps operate the Plantation EM Resort on Crystal River. Greg Dalton is the Citrus County property appraiser. Greg this is his first term in office. He has thrown himself into this position and is doing great things. You do not blame him for high tax bills. And finally, we have Eric Landon, who is the Citrus County Growth Management Director in the community. Eric.
I came here in the 70s, and to put it in perspective, we had one traffic light in all of Citrus County when I moved here. And they turned it off at 5 o'clock at night. We had less than 30,000 people at the time. It was a very small community, but when we began to grow Citrus County, the strategy was we positioned ourselves as the cheapest place in Florida to retire. Okay? Think about that for a minute. It's wonderful on one hand because we were able to invite and entice a lot of people from the north to come and relocate here. But what we did is we built really inexpensive homes And we had very low tax bills coming from those inexpensive homes. I think it created a whole issue of lack of funding of infrastructure over decades. Now, the strategy has changed now, but we're somewhat going in different directions. And I think one of the wonderful things about being here tonight is that maybe we have most every elected official in Citrus County is sitting in this room. We have the opportunity to give direction and to discuss what those strategies look like. So this can be a very productive evening, a very good start in moving forward. So let's begin tonight. We're going to start with Representative Ralph Masulo. And again, Ralph has been involved in this community as a physician and as a civic leader for so many years. But we want to ask him to speak for a few minutes about regarding growth management in Florida and what the overall state view is of growth management and how those practices and measures impact Citrus County. What has the state legislature done? What has Tallahassee done to give us tools to deal with the growth? So with that, Ralph.
Thank you. Thank you, Jared. Before I begin, I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this event. I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your time this evening to come and listen, because I think it's extremely important that the community is involved, because without your involvement, growth will not happen and it won't happen well. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. You know, when the state looks at growth, it's sort of a double-edged sword, as Jerry alluded to, because what we do as a state encourages growth. And so what we need to do as a state is to do our best to control it. And we look at it in three main aspects. The first is our resources. What we're trying to do with resources is, number one, rectify them. Number two, preserve them. And number three, conserve them. And you know, there's an old saying that my mother used to always say, you can always tell where people's priorities are by looking at how they spend their money. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we spend money in Florida on resources. This year alone in our budget, we put $1.4 billion in Everglades restoration. If we look at the growth in our state, a lot of it has been happening, at least in the past, in the southeast area of our state. And in that area, if you look at the maps back before Jerry even got here, back in the early part of the 20th century, a lot of the drainage that we had from Lake Okeechobee went over where we now have Dade County, which is the most, I would say, densely populated place in our state. It's important that we preserve that water flow and that drainage. We have a little bit of those same issues here in Citrus County. Part of that, when we're looking at resources, is we have to realize that not only do people influence those, but our climate has a big influence on it as well. And what we've done in the last few years is spent a lot of money in making our state more resilient. Currently, we're putting $220 million in our Resilient Florida program to help our state better prepare and survive these weather anomalies that we're seeing, particularly with hurricanes, tornadoes, and the like. Also, we need to restore a lot of our conservation land. What we're trying to do in our state, and that's fairly unique, is we started a couple years ago with a wildlife corridor. That corridor we're hoping will extend through Florida and extend up the East Coast. But that corridor is land that cannot be developed. It can have certain rural activities, but it would not be developed for homes and businesses. It will preserve a good bit of what I would say natural Florida is all about. This year, we're putting over $158 million in the Florida Forever program, which is actually a program to actually buy more of that conservation land. But a lot of that land, believe it or not, is donated by private industry, large tracts of ranchers that have a lot of land that they're putting in conservation, because they also see, which I think is very important for those public-private partnerships, they see the importance of preserving the natural beauty of Florida and also the importance of preserving land and resources for growth. As hurricanes have damaged our state, we've had a lot of erosion in our beaches. This year, we're putting $50 million into beach restoration. And of course, we need water for absolutely everything. You know, the average Floridian uses about 100 gallons of water a day. And well, I'd like to see that number go down, but you know, we're human. And that's just simply what we do. But we're spending almost $750 million to make our drinking water and wastewater programs improve. Something that no other state is doing. So you should be proud of Florida for what we're trying to do with our resources. The next thing we need to look at when we look at growth is our infrastructure. And we use infrastructure for a lot of reasons. We use infrastructure to move people around for our economy. But we also use infrastructure to help move people around for public safety, particularly with what's happening with our weather. So in our area of the state, primarily we're very blessed to see the Suncoast Parkway continue to evolve. And it will evolve through our county, up through to US Highway 19, and then in the years to come, it will use the right-of-ways of US 19 to actually connect to Interstate 10. So it will be the north-south corridor on the west side of the state, similarly as I-95 and the Turnpike is the north-south corridor on the east side of the state. This year, we're putting $15.5 billion with the Florida Department of Transportation and $14.2 billion in funding for a 5-year work program for new projects. $630 million will be moving Florida forward infrastructure to supplement those works and accelerate completion of projects that are already on the books. Building a highway facility, as you all have seen, is a multi-year project. And oftentimes, the roads don't get finished till long after the need has arisen. So that's why planning is so important. And long-term vision is also important. The Florida legislature has been a leader in doing that as far as our state roads. And I think our county commission in Citrus County is doing a fairly good job of trying to predict our growth. And events like this, I think, will actually facilitate that. Part of infrastructure also has to do with our housing. You know, Sheridan sort of had a little comment about affordable housing. And housing in Citrus County is more or less affordable. When you look at some of the rest of the state, it's not affordable at all. In Tampa, the average cost of housing is almost $450,000 for a single family home. Most people today, particularly young people, cannot afford that. So the state is trying in many ways to make housing more affordable. We're putting $483 million towards affordable housing projects. But indirectly, what we're trying to do is lower the cost of homeowners insurance. We're trying to protect homes. We're putting $225 million into the My Safe Florida Home Program, and if you haven't participated in that program, I would ask each of you to at least investigate it. That program allows you to find areas of your home that you could actually make more resilient, and the state will help cost share some of those improvements. We've also, you know, we've had the problem in Southeast Florida with some of the older condos with subsidization where the sand actually shifts, and that's led to some tragedies. So we're putting $27 million into condo hardening, and we're having policies to help condo associations use the reserves that they actually should be collecting from the owners to help harden the condos. We're putting $93.1 million into the repair of state buildings, which, you know, being at the state capitol, it seems like they're constantly under a construction program. And $72.4 million towards distribution of physically constrained counties. Citrus County doesn't qualify as a physically constrained county, fortunately, but there are some of those counties that do, where the tax revenue base does not actually come up to the point where it helps pay for their needs. Another thing we're doing by a lot of grants is trying to improve our infrastructure in stormwater management, which I think is extremely important, particularly in areas where we have low-lying and flooding. If you go down to Miami, when it rains hard, Brickell Avenue is oftentimes underwater. We have some problems here too, but we have now in our community the ability to use grants statewide, $100 million a year to be able to make our communities more resilient for stormwater management, for helping to improve our sewer systems. We have money for septic to sewer conversions, and I'm hoping that continues to improve and increase in the years to come. So the state is actually doing a lot in that regard. The third thing I think when we look at growth is our people. Certainly our state has the primary responsibility is to keep our people safe. And I think we're spending a lot of money in trying to improve our health care. We had a bill this year called the Live Healthy Act. And basically, in a nutshell, what that did is provide more money to hospitals for low income. But more than that, it actually improved the amount of postgraduate medical education that we have in our state and other education for healthcare providers. Because if we don't have an informed population and an educated population to provide healthcare, we're not going to be able to deliver it. And the state recognizes that. And I don't think any other state in the country has done that to date. So I'm extremely proud of that. Another part of keeping our people safe is to make sure they're educated. Education is the second highest priority that our state has. We spend over $30 billion a year in education, and I'm not going to steal Scott's thunder here, but I can tell you, our state is #1 in education in the last few years, from K through 12 all the way up to secondary education. One of our priorities has been to improve career and technical education. And as you've seen from some of the slides, you don't need necessarily a 4-year degree to have a productive job where you can be happy with your life. But our state wants to make sure that you can get the education to be able to do what you want to do, what God's given you the ability to do and your aptitude to be able to help yourself, your family, and your community.
Good overview from the state level of what's going on, but Dr. Hebert, let's talk specifically about our public school system in Citrus County and what it's doing to prepare students for jobs. We don't have a huge manufacturing business, and we often hear from those manufacturers who are here that they can't find qualified workers. What's our public school system doing?
So let me start and share. We have an amazing school system in Citrus County, and I will say, bar none, the best in the state. We have an amazing system, and I will tell you, thanks to Representative Missoula for his work to help support all the initiatives that we have in the county. He is up there championing that work each and every day, and we appreciate that work that he's been able to do. But I will share with you a report from the Institute for the Future underscores the possibility that up to 85% of jobs anticipated for students in 2030 either do not exist currently or will undergo substantial transformation. So think about that. 85% of the jobs out there don't even exist, and our students are in schools today. As a school district, we take this seriously for our elementary students, our middle school, and our high school students. And our curriculum and the way we have our students work is to prepare them for post-secondary opportunities after high school. Some of the students may attend college. Some may want to go to the military. Some may want to go direct to career. So they graduate, want to go into the workforce, or a combination of any of those are available. But one of the things that I'm proudest of in my role, working for the school system for the past 34 years, is our focus on career and technical education. Specifically, during my tenure at the district office, we provided access to students across our high schools in career and technical education in rigorous programs. We have 155 career and technical courses covering 70 different industry certifications for students. They connect to 38 different programs and study pathways that then connect to various industries within our own community. These programs include the Academy of Computer Science that we have, the Academy of Health Careers, the School of the Arts, and most recently, the Construction Academy in Citrus High School. We also offer in-school academies at all 3 of our high schools in areas such as agriculture, culinary, drafting, business, and much more. Each of these programs are designed to give our students hands-on practical experience in various fields, allowing them to make informed decisions about their futures in Citrus County.
Linda Stockton, please talk to us a little bit about Tampa General and the impact it make on the community from a financial standpoint, we know from a health center, but from an economic standpoint. How does Tampa General do it? What does the future look like?
Well, as I look around this room and see everyone here, I realize what a responsibility we have as healthcare providers to everyone here in this community that uses our services. Sorry. Can you hear me? Yeah, just such a responsibility for the healthcare community to take care of everyone here in this room and everyone in Citrus County. We provide about $135 million in benefit to the community. Over half of that is an uncompensated and charity care for the community, and probably about $55 million last year in salaries for the workers. We actually employed close to 700 employees last year, and this year we're already at about 743 employees right now. So that's just really important. All of those employees are very important to take care of everyone here in the community. And there's such a responsibility, and it's really hard to find trained workers. And also, we have an aging population of physicians, and recruiting physicians into our community has been a big challenge for the healthcare community. And I think that's one thing. If you look around at all of us and the age of us in this room, the same thing goes for the physicians. Getting those physicians to come into our community. What's happening is people in the community are having to leave the community. They're having to out-migrate to Ocala, Tampa for healthcare services. So one thing I think with Tampa General coming into our community, it is a not-for-profit system. We will be investing all of the money that we make here in the hospital back into the hospital, into the community. So I think that's going to be more funding for our hospital personally to be able to provide services for the members of our community. And we're seeing that already. We are going through a 5-year strategic planning process. Being a not-for-profit hospital, we're very responsible with how we're going to spend our money. Looking at the growth, right now we're looking at what the growth is in the next 5 years, because we have to get ahead of that and we have to build services to take care of the community 5 years from now. I mean, right now we're struggling getting the workers, but what's it going to look like 5 years from now? We already know that we are underbedded in this community. That's why people are traveling outside of the community to get services. So it's a big challenge for the healthcare providers. I know, Lisa and I used to work for the same company actually, and it's always been a challenge in healthcare, especially in Florida. And I think that's just one of the challenges that we're embracing at Tampa General. So we're in this 5-year strategic planning process. This first year is we're being very thoughtful, going through looking at physician alignment models. How do we align with physicians to keep them here in our community or to attract them into our community? This afternoon I had a great meeting with a young thoracic surgeon, female. We are a lung cancer belt right here through Citrus County. We detected probably 289 lung nodules here in Citrus County last year and only biopsied 11 of them. Everything else went outside of the community. So that was something that Tampa General immediately realized that we needed, and so we had some of the leaders from USF come up, and we actually have recruited a thoracic surgeon to this area. So getting in front of this growth, because we need to make sure that we're prepared to take care of the community. And knowing how many beds we need, how many outpatient facilities, because as healthcare changes, it's not just inpatient facilities that we need. We're going to need ambulatory surgery. I know we put the freestanding in the middle of the county, and that's been a great help for access to emergency care there in the center of the county. But we need more. And looking 5 years out, the planning process is we really have to get in front of that. And so that's what we're doing right now at Tampa General. And I think that just looking at innovation and what we can bring in to bring the world-class care here to Citrus County, because we all have a right to world-class care. We don't need to go out in the county. We need to have that care right here in Citrus County for us.
Dr. Newby take us to HCA Citrus and talk to us about somewhat the same thing. What's the economic impact? What are the struggles that you have in attracting a qualified staff and an expanded staff to this community? And what does the future look like?
Sure, thank you. So HCA treated about 105,000 patients.
A little closer to the, yeah.
We treated about 105,000 patients last year and saw about 45,000 people in our emergency rooms. Our salary, wages, and benefits in this community last year, we paid over $101 billion, and our taxes paid were close to $14 million and counting. And the cost of charity and uncompensated care that we provided was over $12 million to the county. So again, very focused on this county and providing the care that the county needs. I agree with Linda. The challenge for us as we move forward is going to be bringing doctors and nurses and other allied healthcare professionals into the county. So training is really, really an important thing. And so at HCA, one of the things that we're very involved in is graduate medical education. We call it GME. And this is where we train doctors and fellows, those who finish medical school, finish their residency, and are specializing. And so at HCA currently, we have about 101 residents and fellows, and we train about 70 doctors a year in internal medicine. And then we have a transitional year, which is where people get out of medical school and they want to take that 1 year and survey different specialties. And so they do rotation in surgery, anesthesia, and they make their decision where to do their residency. And then after they've graduated from their residency, last year we opened 3 fellowship programs, one in cardiology, one in gastroenterology, and one in critical care. So training more doctors to stay in our community and provide the services that you need and our future residents will need. The nursing pipeline is also a challenge, so we partner very closely with our local colleges throughout Central Florida, as well as all of Citrus County, and hosting these students to come in, do their clinical work in the hospital, and hopefully retaining them as nurses in our community. I think one of the challenges, and Linda spoke about it well, is the ability to recruit people to our community, and a lot of that has to do with housing. And so I was really excited to hear about the affordable housing, because when you bring in young people, they need to probably rent an apartment and live someplace until they accumulate enough money for a down payment. And so we don't have a lot of apartment availability right now in Citrus County. And so what happens is those people go to Ocala, they work in the Ocala hospitals, they go to Brooksville, they work in the Brooksville hospitals. So it makes it a very big challenge to get people to drive with the fluctuating price of gas that we've seen over the past couple of years into our county to work. So that's going to be very, very helpful to us to retain and to bring in new talent here. So one of the other things Linda mentioned was lung cancer. We have a higher than average smoking rate here in our community, and we see a lot more lung cancers here. So HCA is working as well on that very important illness with low-dose lung CT scanning and our cardiac and thoracic surgery program. We also provide cardiac surgery to the community. We have a 3-star Society of Thoracic Surgery program for the 13th year running. That is how cardiac surgery programs are rated all over the United States, and the missed stars that you can receive on 3 stars. And so you have very high quality cardiac surgery that's performed at Citrus every day. The other thing that we're providing here too, as well as our OB services, about 11% of our county are of childbearing age. And we see a lot of women who come in and need OB services, and we also see a lot of high-risk moms as well. And we need to give them access to OB services early in their pregnancy so that they can develop healthy habits for growing that wonderful baby to full term. And so we provide those services here as well in our OB programs. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Becky Beatty has been in the nursing business for a long time, and even though she's very young. She has worked many years and has a deep understanding of what's happening in the nursing business. Talk to us a little bit about the nursing field and how difficult it is to attract help.
So I've been asked, of which discipline would you say Citrus County needs of nursing? My answer is always all of them. From critical care to ER to surgical to outpatient. We're short on nurses. Nurses, they want just a few things. They want to feel safe. They want to be paid, and they want to know that they are going to be supported to do the thing that they care more about than anything, and that's taking care of you. I feel like as we move forward, as we talked about, I am very concerned that in the subject matter of mental health, I think we are going to be short on mental health nurses. It is a conversation that comes up quite a bit within the nursing community that we don't have anyone to take care of not only the mental health of our youth, but also of our elderly. One of the things that we've done at Clear Sky, and also I must say that both hospitals do a fantastic job working with the colleges of nursing, but we have gone to partner with mental health. In nursing school, you have different classes that you take, and we've specifically pulled out the mental health classes, and we're partnering with those students specifically to address mental health issues within the elderly. I think that as we move forward, to be able to recruit nurses that specialize in mental health is going to be very important. I also feel like the nurses, in order to stay in Citrus County, they touched on that, about having affordable housing for them. Nurses come in here to Citrus County, and as she mentioned, they have nowhere where to live. So they do travel, and now we have access for them to get to Tampa and Oak Hill and other counties easily with our roadways. And I feel like the young people need to have something to do here. We now have Starbucks, which I think this city knows to Starbucks, and Chick-fil-A. That'll be great. So we having more networking for the young people to come in, having nurse leaders kind of get together and say, what is it your nurse wants? What does your nurses want? I think that moving forward like that, we can bring them here and get them to stay here.
Very good. One of the balancing acts that we have as a community is without the affordable housing, as Becky said, many nurses and school teachers do the same thing. They end up living either in Hernando County or Marion County. So they work for us for 1 year, and the second year comes around, and they're driving every day from Spring Hill to Citrus High School. Guess what? That grows old, and they make the decision, well, Hernando High School's hiring, I'm going to go down there. And so suddenly we lose qualified workers who we've gone to the expense to attract to our community, in many cases providing scholarships and education. They end up going someplace else because we don't have the infrastructure in place to handle them. And a lot of it is about housing, but a lot of it is about the social scene for younger people. We have a lot of amenities building up here for seniors, which that's the majority of our population. But we can't forget the fact that we have young people who need things to do too. It needs to be a good place for them to live and raise their family. And not to throw all of this on you, Jim Wilton, but let's go ahead. Talk to us, Jim, if you can, a little bit about what's going on with real estate right now, and then where you see the market going.
I was given the easiest questions of the night, and that is, what do I think about the real estate market? I think if we took a poll, we would all agree that the real estate market has been booming. It is booming. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say we're at least an 8. A couple of years ago, end of 2021 and 2022, we saw a spike in real estate sales. We saw a lot of properties that left the market. We saw supply problems with drywall. I think air conditioning, wood, just seemed like everything. Roofing, but that seems to have cleared up in 2024. I would say that we are in very good shape. There is a concern, and actually 2 concerns. The first is affordable housing. If you all are involved with what I see every day, and that is Insurance rates have gone up 20 to 40%. The floodplain has gone up 2 feet, and that means more money for folks on the coast that have to pay separate insurance if they have any money owed on their homes. We see mortgage rates go up 5% since maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And although that's not an outrageous, 6.5%, 7% is an outrageous amount of money to spend for a mortgage when you buy it. We were, for many years, sitting at 2.5%, 3%. So, and there's other factors. Taxes, I think, if I'm not mistaken, taxes have gone up 18.7% 1 year. Proposed increases. So you see, one of the things that we have is dealing with affordability. And I think we're facing some very, very severe headwinds when it comes to that question of affordability. There are some charts which I would hope help answer some of the questions regarding the health of our current real estate market. If you look at the projection over in front of you, you see in 14 years ago, January of 2014, the average house was right around $100,000, $111,000 to be more exact. As the years went by, you can see a steady increase. In 2024, January, you'll see there was a little bit of difference, but according to our MLS, it was $260,000 to $261,000. That's a 180% increase in that 14-year period. And I would say at least 50% of that was in the last 3 or 4 years, that 21, 22, and 23 period. So it's a very robust market. It's a healthy market. I was talking to Dr. Dusai a couple of days ago, and we were talking about the markets, and he reminded me that real estate, like every other market, cycles. So the caution is there are peaks and valleys that we have to be aware of. We have to be cautious. I think we have to be very vigilant about pricing and where it's going. And if we do that, we won't get caught. If you remember in the 60s, Sam Kellner, actually, Beverly Hills, he had the $9,995 home. Most folks were flying in from New York and they were retiring. They'd sell their home at probably 3 or 4 times more than that money, and then they'd buy a home here and live happily ever after. As the years have transpired, that has changed. The average home in Florida now is somewhere around $200,000 or $420,000. We are at $361,000. One of the things that I found very interesting on that chart is that in January we were at $260,000. Now 6 months later we're at $361,000. So you see that momentum is continuing, and quite frankly, it's a little startling for me because I make my living selling real estate, and it gets pretty hard as those prices keep going up. That's another chart which basically says the same thing. It's a little easier to read, but we have gone from 100,000 to 2024, basically $300,000. Could we have the next? This I presented as a result of the sales that we have made over the last 10 years. You see how steady it is. All I'm trying to demonstrate here is that's 220,000 at listings. We average about 4,000 or 5,000 listings a month to come and go. So we're replacing the inventory that's sold. There's a lot of speculation going on right now. Acreage was 5,000 an acre. A couple of years later, it was 10,000 an acre. A couple of years after that, it's 15, and now we're saying it at 20 and 25,000. And those are the larger parcels. The smaller parcels, the 5 and 10 acre tracts, are going as much as $20,000 to $30,000, $40,000 per acre. So you see the prices keep going. And if we're trying to live our lives out, this said the dean of real estate, I think he was really referring to the oldest guy in real estate that's still standing. Been in this business 45 years, and I've seen such change. It just amazes me. My concern, again, is the affordability, and another concern, which is I don't think enough is talked about, is inflation, or the depreciating dollar. In the newscast yesterday, I saw where it was 3.4%. I talked to Eric Williams, who is very knowledgeable, if you know him, and I said, how could that be? He said, that's over the 100-year average. So it may be an accurate number over 100 years, but if you look the year in, year out average, it's more like 9 to 14, 15%. I mean, we have to be aware of that. The government, and I'm probably not politically correct in saying this, but we can't keep cranking out dollars and not having anything in back of those dollars. When a dollar buys today something and next year it's going to be buying 50 cents worth of whatever product we have, it puts us at odds with our fixed income people. So that is my concern, and the future, the next chart there is simply how if you look at the green chart is sales in 22, the blue is sales in 23, and the red, or whatever color that is, purple, sales in 24, and we're only halfway through the sales in 24, so you can see we've had some very strong years. The pricing of housing was 100 to maybe 350, and then it keeps creeping over. But what it really demonstrates is we've seen 3 or 4 years of momentum. We had 2-3% increase in pricing, and then it hit momentum in 2021 about December 2022, 23, and 24. Part of that momentum, but please keep in mind that everything cycles. Next chart, please. That's a chart on available inventory. As you see, in 2014, there was approximately 3,000. This is residential listings. You can see that over the years it decreased. As it decreased, that simply meant that the market was more active and more robust, and we were not replacing inventory. You see, in 2021, it was at a low. There was only 500 listings, and there's about 1,500 realtors, so we were all scrambling for a house to sell. But you can see that in 2022 and 2023, it starts to recover. In 2024, we're sitting at 1,500 listings, which is about what we replace on a monthly basis. So it looks like we're recovering nicely. I think the supply chain is coming in. I talked to the county today about permitting, and they say there's about 2,000 new homes being built a year, and that number should double in the next 3 to 5 years. There's a lot of larger builders that are now discovered Citrus County, and they're coming into the county in force, and I think they'll be able to probably replace the number of resale homes with new sale homes. So as the population grows, we will grow with it, and I think we'll be fine. That's pretty much what's going to happen in 2030. I think we're going to see more of the same. It's not going to be quite as robust, nor should it be as robust. I don't think it's healthy to go down to 500 listings when we should be sitting at 1,500 to maybe 2,000 listings. That keeps the supply and demand balanced, if you will. So I think we have a bright future, but I do caution everyone, be careful. We saw it happen in 2008. We lost 50% of our market, if you remember, and we didn't recover for 10 years. In 2018, we started to recover, and then, of course, we started that 2014. It overlapped to 2018 recovered, and we did become very robust, and that market was cycling up for us. So it's good timing. I think we're in a great market, and I think I had the easiest questions to answer of this path.
Well, for the record, as the dean, we have no expectations.
Jim, we're not done asking questions to you, so.
Let's next go to Dr. Dennis Grillo. He deserves special recognition tonight for surviving the tornado this year. We've all been about that. Dennis, talk to us about physicians coming to Citrus County and how difficult is it to find good qualified people to come here?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to participate here. I just want to tell you that it is definitely a challenge. Personally, I've been looking to replace my partner since 2007, unsuccessfully. I came here in '89. There were 4 ENT guys, and we handled much less population. So fast forward now, I'm turning away people I can't see because I'm by myself and I can do what's only humanly possible. The problem that I see is not only here locally, but it also is actually nationwide. ENT residencies, and I'll stop for a second and say, you know, I'm specific to my specialty, but this also does reflect other specialties. But programs have been shut down for lack of reimbursement. And the other thing is that a lot of these residents are getting trained by fellowships, trained doctors. And so they hyper-specialize. You may not recall or remember, but ear, nose, and throat used to be eyes, ears, nose, and throat in the 60s, and it split off. So with this hyper-specialization, it becomes increasingly difficult to draw people here to a community that would just benefit from a general ENT doctor like myself. So I'm kind of like the general practitioners. I talked to one of my colleagues the other day, and he threw a number at me that I was just amazed at. He said the county is short about 40 primary care doctors. I was flabbergasted. I would expect it to be that high. So there's a problem here, and we're going to get growth. And as mentioned previously, you have to have something here for the people to want to come here. If you're fortuitous enough to have a potential doctor that's maybe born and raised in a small county, sees the value, as I certainly did when I came here with my young children, then you're going to hit it out of the park. But most of these young docs they're very much oriented to being in larger communities. And I hate to say it, a lot of them are risk adverse. And that is not just a Citrus County problem. Years ago, they dropped the hours that residents were required to work, so they're seeing a lot less cases, so they're a little bit scared to be by themselves. You come to Citrus County, you chop down the tree, build a log cabin, that type of thing. They want no part of that. And also, a lot of them are also not wanting to do small business, which is essentially what doctors are and have been for years. Although that's quickly changing across the country. I think now 50% of the docs are employed. But that being said, I've had a couple of communications with the CEO of Tampa General, thanks to Linda, and I believe that the future for Citrus County, at least from an ENT standpoint, is going to be some sort of hybrid system. I don't know that I'll be replaced. There may be a clinic here where they'll come from Tampa General or other areas, and if ENT splits up like I see it doing in the future, one day you might see a doctor for your ear, next day for your nose and throat. That's kind of the natural progression with medicine these days. So Citrus County is not unique. It's happening all over the country, but of course it's very pertinent to us because we all live here and want to have the coverage. And so I pledge to you that I will do my best until we can find somebody. And I'm always hopeful. And like I say, I think in the future it's going to have to be some sort of hybrid system, not the traditional one.
No, sure.
But we pledge that Ralph is going to do all he can to keep tornadoes away from your office.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about healthcare because that is one of the biggest business segments we have, and one of the most complicated industries that we have to deal with as growth happens. How do we make sure that new people and existing people here have the healthcare services they deserve? Very complicated. Next, though, I want to move to Russell Hallenbeck, who is one of our few manufacturers in the community. What we want to talk to Russell about is how is it running an industry in Citrus County, and what are the skills and problems that you run into in bringing qualified employees to your business?
Okay, this is going to be a boring part. This is not talking about healthcare here, so I apologize. One of the things I'll say is one of the challenges that you have in the manufacturing industry is in Citrus County, again, these numbers are pretty close for, they got to be close, is I think there's 360,000 acres in Citrus County and only 2,400 is zoned for industrial. That's a challenge in itself. So we were faced with some of those challenges when we came back to Citrus County. in 2019, and our company has invested over $7 million in this county since we've come back. Why are we back? Because it's very special to me. I graduated here from 1987 at Citrus High School. This is home for me. It's very personal. This is where my heritage is. It's where we want to be. And one of the challenges you have in the sector of manufacturing is, I think one of the things that I was asked is, how do you attract? Well, I'm sitting here because we invested. I went to Citrus High School. At noon, I left and went to the VOTEC. I went to carpentry class, learned a skill, and decided to go walk into a little lumber company up there off Highway 41 in Inverness, right across the street from Burger King called Cox Lumber. That's why I'm sitting here today. That's how it happened. All kids don't want to go to college. Some don't. Some are not college kids. I'm a perfect example right here. We invest in our children, give them the vocational schools that they need, and I've heard some really good things down there. Watch what happens. Instead of attract, let's invest. Let's take our kids, let them live here, and let our grandkids live here. And if we can do that as a community, we're not going to need any outside sources. We don't need Hernando County. We don't need Marion County. And you're seeing a perfect example of it right here. A lot of other things, too, that come into play. I heard a lot about affordable housing. I know you didn't ask me that question, but I'm going to jump in there. We have a little bit of a challenge with affordable housing because there's something that's totally out of our control here. And one of the things you're going to hear, you're all going to be shocked, is in the building material industry, with the hurricane codes and with the lumber we have to use to protect us in the high wind zones, 90% of that lumber comes out of the southeast from mills that are owned by Canadians now. They have bought all the lumber mills. So that is out of our control. 20 years ago, there were American companies running. That's a challenge we have long term that will affect the whole nation long term. So with that said, as Tibbetts Lumber, we assemble doors in Lecanto. We just opened a new facility a couple years ago, and we've done a lot of homegrown training and a lot of things like that. Most of that stuff that we were doing before was in Marion County. We decided to bring it here. But I think the challenges go way farther beyond just land. And I think that if we put our foot forward and put those VOTECs, is what I called them back when I was in school, they have to be close to the high school. We have 3 great high schools here. We have Lecanto High School, we have Crystal River, and we have Citrus. The one in Inverness is basically right across the street. If we can get them close and educate our children and tell them to find a path to make a living, I think that the county will prosper.
Are they being? Obviously, one of the largest industries we have in Citrus County and have had for more than 50 years is production of energy, probably to more than like 100 years. Danielle Ruiz is with the economic development side of Duke Energy, and we like to ask, they have been the largest employer in Citrus County, I should say the largest private employer in our school system, employs the most people. But what's the future look like? What's Duke Energy doing in Citrus County, and where do we go from here?
Well, thanks for having me today. So as you heard, and many of you know, we have a significant energy generation facility west side of the county that produces about $27 million in tax base for the community. We are an example of how we can be, obviously, energy, have manufacturing, and a major residential base. Diversification is our key and critical factor to being a successful economy, right? And in doing so, you will reduce the cost of services to the residents and, frankly, the entire tax base in the community. We employ several hundred people in the county. We, from a grants and sponsorships perspective, provided $212,000 just in the past year in investments to nonprofits and the like, and do significant volunteer hours as well. We have over 50,000 customers, so many of you probably are customers in the community. you probably, in a national trend, is energy and grid and renewables. And back in 2022, we invested in our Bay Trail solar facility that is adjacent to our Crystal River Energy Complex. That was a continued investment. By the end of this year, we'll have 1,500 megawatts of solar in our state across our footprint in Florida. In the next 3 years, we'll have an additional 1,000 megawatts. So major focus on renewable energy in our state, of course, leveraging the sun. That will continue to be a growing energy mix for us. The majority of our energy mix that we continue to see is natural gas. So we do continue to invest in natural gas as a company across our 6 states. We will continue to invest in natural gas as our main energy generation source. As it relates to my day job, economic development, we've worked really closely over many years. I've been with the company for a little over 10 years, and over those 10 years, I've seen the growth here. And I just want to commend the community and the county specifically for planning for the growth, not only for the residential growth, but for the diversification of new industry coming into the state and into the community. One that many of you may know, planning for where that growth can go, both from residential and manufacturing, commercial investments, you want to be able to know where that growth is going to go. So the planning to see where that would go on the east side, the central, and the west side of the county is important. One of those central locations is in Holder, the Holder Industrial Park. Back in 2015, that was identified as a large single owner property that could have major tax base and investment potential for the community. We've done some impact analyses that range from hundreds of millions of dollars in value that one site that's 550 acres could bring to the community. That comes with jobs, of course, tax base with the property tax, and then the personal property that comes with that as well, the ad valorem and personal property. That site, back in 2015, we evaluated through our Duke Energy Site Readiness Program in partnership with the then Economic Development Authority for Citrus County, led by Don Taylor, and many people in this room that were on that board that I joined to move that forward. From that point, there were identifications of where the wastewater is, where the water location is to bring to that site. Working with the Planning Commission, working with the County Commission, we ultimately, and the state, of course, we rezoned that property to industrial. So that's part of the note of 2,400, 550 of that is part of that manufacturing quote that you heard earlier from Russ. And that really it engaged the community because, of course, with Planning Commission, you engage public hearings, and many of you have been part of that. But we see that as a potential an attraction of new jobs and new tax base. Ultimately, beyond that 550 acres, that same owner owns another 800 acres adjacent to that property. So the potential is even greater than what I shared.
Tell us.
The Board of County Commissioners just last year approved another $700,000 to go toward wastewater extension to the site. That's to couple with another $2.8 million through a grant. So either state or federally, we're looking for a grant to support that wastewater extension, because if you have a ready site, you have a better chance of locating new investment to the property. Let's see, what else do I have to share? So as we continue to focus on new growth, obviously it's smart growth. We want to be a continued partner in the diversification of this community, but of course our proud investors in Citrus County. Thanks for the opportunity.
Very good. One of the growing businesses in Citrus County over the last decade has been tourism. And Michael Laneke, as his day job, he runs the Plantation Inn in Crystal River. His extra job is he's a member of the Tourist Development Council that raises tax dollars through
the sale of hotel beds to tourists, and then they use those tax dollars to promote and improve the tourism economy in Citrus County. So, Michael, what's going on in tourism?
Everybody came here once as a tourist, right? Almost everybody that didn't live here usually comes as a vacationer first. So I like to I get the good side. I get to be the person that promotes tourism and everybody having a fun time, and folks don't like visitors to be around. Overall, we do about 1.6 million visitors a year to our area, which doesn't sound like a lot if you compare us to the Orlando or the Disney section, but it's a significant amount for a size county that we have. We do about a $450 million impact, economic impact across the county, which one of the things we're proud of in a way, in talking about development, is it generates 4,500 jobs. So it's an opportunity for your folks to stick here and have a job. And tourism is great. I didn't know I was going to be in this business. I was definitely not thinking in the line of hospitality when I got out of college, but I'm really tickled that I got to do it. People ask a lot of times, where do our tourists come from and how do we find them? We've been, over the last few years, there's great growth opportunities. You guys follow us at all. When I got here 13 years ago, we were collecting under about $1 million in tax collection. And that tax collection is a 5% now on overnight accommodations, which is not only hotels, but also short-term housing rentals as well as RV parks. So it's grown in that respect. We're now up to around just over $3 million. That may sound like a lot, but as I like to say, we wouldn't be able to pay the Peninsula County's tourist development groups a payroll with that. So we do a lot with very little. So I really think the TDC, the CBB, everyone who look at it does a great job with a little bit of money to continue to attract people to help the tax base get better and better. We hire major companies. We have Miles Partnership out of Sarasota right now. We used to have Mad Media. They do a great job of taking our monies and putting it where it belongs to attract. Most of our tourists right now come from within Florida. But you got to remember, a lot of within Florida tourists are actually from somewhere else initially. They may live in Tampa, but they were from Pittsburgh. They may live in Daytona Beach, but they were from New York and Chicago and so it's an interesting marketing ploy that we get a lot of residential, again, Florida people to come experience us, but yet a lot of those folks still have the same trends and traits as where they came from initially. About 18% of our business also is international, and again, we do the trade shows in Europe. We go to ITV, we go to World Travel Mart. Terry Navik, who you guys may or may not know, is always on the road at RV park shows and travel shows. So we do a pretty good job with a little bit of money to attract more people, which then gives us also, I think, an opportunity for people to have things to do, because with that base of business, it gives the local businesses an opportunity to create a job or a business that's something fun to do, which might benefit that younger group you're talking about, trying to find something to do and have a good time with. I think that's about all. I mean, happy to answer whatever question comes up in the future, but I think the origin and the catalyst of a lot of growth opportunities comes from folks that are just looking out there to have a great time and see what we have to offer, and then maybe choose to become a resident and an employee here.
Craig Wilton, property appraiser, talk to us about, give us an overview of the tax roll and the changes we've seen and the increases in valuation.
Let's go ahead and compare 24 to 2014. The residential number, these are exact numbers as of the other day. So the residential value. So when we talk about values, whereas Mr. Morton talks about market value, we're talking about taxable value. So that's two totally different values, and that's where a lot of people get lost in translation. But for us, the taxable value for residential for this year is $10,462,000,000 at $837,984. So if you compare that number to 10 years ago, it was only roughly 4.6 billion. Right, so big number. That's a big number. And when you talk about residential, let's make sure we understand what we're talking about here. We're talking about vacant residential. We're talking about residential, mobile homes, non-agricultural acreage, and condos. So you have to group that into that same number. And then commercial, you're looking at $2,353,262,804 for this year. And then 10 years ago, that number was only 1.6 billion. All right, so that's a big jump, right? But also understand, so let's look at some statistics. I know there's some economists out there that like this stuff, but back in 2014, we were 73% residential. and 26% commercial. Where's the other 1%? That's the other. That's the tangible stuff. So 73% residential, 26% commercial. Where are we at today? We're looking at 81% residential, 18% commercial. So let's talk about this for a second. So Duke started decommissioning roughly 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, I know it was many years ago, but they started removing buildings off of their property, right? They started removing that. We've removed since 2013. Duke's a great partner, so I'm just giving you the numbers why that maybe that percentage has dropped and switched to residential. We've removed 33 properties. Duke has removed 33 properties out there. So that's roughly $15 million in taxable value out there. So there's some good to come out of this, right? I know Eric's going to talk about growth, and so that's important. In the last 2 years, we've added to the rolls 24 commercial structures to the roll. In 2 years, so 21, 22. For last year, so today, we've added 25 new commercial structures, and we're projecting 25 more for the next year. So I think you're going to see statistically that number go back to 73, 75, 25, and you're going to see a better move there. Also, to put it in perspective, we have roughly 136,000 residential parcels, so that could have a home on it, not have a home on it condo. And then we only have 9,600 parcels for commercial. So when you see that 81-18 and 73-26, know that there's just more residential parcels than there are commercial parcels. So you got to put that in perspective, right? And I'm going to hit on something Russ actually mentioned. I was really hoping he wasn't going to mention, or I was not going to have enough to talk about. But he talked about the lumber. So let's go ahead and compare 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago on a 1,200 square foot home, 10 years ago, 1,200 square foot home, we averaged the price out to be $62 a square foot. Okay, today that same 1,200 square foot house is valued at $166 a square foot. So that he said it, I'm just putting a number on it. I was hoping he wouldn't do it. He saved me some. So there's that. Let me add another number to you because everybody loves numbers in here. Net new construction 10 years ago added to the roll. Net new meaning you demolish buildings or you add buildings. So that's residential or commercial. Net new 10 years ago, that number was 66,944,000. The number that will be coming out in a couple weeks, hot off the press, is 456,575,931. Okay, so that's net new construction added to the county's tax rolls on that. So that's a number they will live with. Now listen, we know as you see on 486 and 491, with residential growth brings the commercial, which will change that number, right? So if we were at 81 and 18, and we want to get back to that 75-25, residential parcels are bringing, those new residents are bringing the commercial aspects, which I know the chamber can talk about. We have had an increase in 8,500 homestead exemptions. So we talk about how do you save your value of your home, your taxable value. We always push exemptions on homes. We got to make sure that our residents are aware of homestead exemption, and that's how they can save that. So 85 new homesteads in the last 2 years, or 10 years, sorry. And so I believe that is all I have, Mr. Perry.
So you hear all these numbers and all these things that are going on in our community. Eric Landon has the job of growth management director for Citrus County. It's like, do we have a plan to handle this? How are we handling this? Eric, let it go.
Thank you. I wanted to say you saved the best for last, but that's obviously not the case. So I think as the community transitions from rural to urban, and I think there are a lot of fears and concerns about how the county grows, I really think that this is a season for us to define what we want to be as a community. I think it's a real opportunity. The county recently partnered with some modeling software that will help determine, based on growth trends, where does the next fire station need to be. And when a developer comes and they're asking for something to make their project a success, we can say, well, in order for our community to be a success, we need a fire station at this location. If we already have a fire station, we need a second truck. If we have a second fire truck, then maybe we need a car. So I think this is an opportunity to really define what we need and what we want to be as a community. And I hope that'll help deter some of the fear and some of the reaction decisions that are made and make more proactive instead of reactive in our community. I think we have a board that has seen that and they're ready to make that transition from reacting to things that were done 20 years ago and projecting the things that will happen 20 years in the future. And I use that 20 years as a key because I have some facts that I want to share. Over 30% of the county is permanently in conservation, cannot ever be built on. And I think when people say, oh, look at all the trees that are being knocked down, look at all the growth, 30% is permanent forever, cannot be built upon. So we're going to remain the nature coast. That does not include water. So if you start factoring in the lakes and the rivers, a very, very large portion of the county will always remain as it is. Building permits have spiked since COVID, of course, but I think some of the data that was initially discussed matches the data we see in our office. They've leveled off since 2022. The last 2 years we've stabilized, and we're still not seeing growth at the rate that we did during the housing boom. So we're still not at the permit levels that we were back in 2003, 2004. So I think maybe that'll help us to calm some of the concerns. Where are the permits being pulled? Well, a lot of the permits that are being pulled are for projects that were approved 30, 50 years ago. If you look at like a lot of the large developments, Sugar Mill, Citrus Springs, Citrus Hills, Pine Ridge, that's where all the permits are going today. But those projects were approved in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So when we approve projects today, we likely won't see rooftops for many, many, many years down the road. And I just wanted to say that our commissioners are very responsive, they're very accessible, they're very available. They're looking for ideas. Our land development code is a working, living document. At least twice a year we bring a large number of amendments. And those are based on the constituents sharing their ideas with the board. The board comes to me and says, hey, I've been hearing from my constituents, we need this change. We write it up, we bring it back to the board, and they make that change. Another round of amendments are coming to the board in July. So feel free to speak to your commissioners. You can call my office anytime. We'll be happy to share any ideas. And thanks for the time. Let me share.
Josh. So does anybody did anybody fill out a card with questions that they want to?
Let's go ahead and, Josh, you ready?
Yeah, so this was entitled growth, and there's good aspects to growth, and there's plans for growth, and there's so much. You heard from the medical community because first of all, that is one of our major sectors of employment. Actually, I believe HCA has surpassed Duke as the largest employer, I think. Or maybe Walmart has surpassed all of you, but as far as, living wages and all of that, good wages. So we thought that was important, and we thought it was important for you all to know that we have a shortage of doctors, we have a shortage of nurses. We are where we are with housing. We're going to need more housing. And I know that I hear, well, more housing creates the need for more doctors, but we have 57,000 plotted lots already for housing, and then you have a different product, why we're against apartments in this community is beyond me, because that's that entry-level housing for people until they can get to that dream of homeownership. And everybody up here said at some point housing was part of it. So that's an important part of it. We're going to have to re-envision what housing is. May not be all, quarter-acre lots in Citrus Springs. There might be some stuff in the urban areas or at the IMA, the interchanges of the Parkway. And we're going to grow. The state of Florida is going to grow. I wanted the economists from the Florida Chamber to come to say it's not It's not a matter of we're just not going to grow. We are going to grow, and they told us how much we're going to grow by, based on the demographics, based on the available land, based on how many people are moving here. So wouldn't it be better if we all came up with a solution-based meeting of the minds to say, well, how do we want to grow? You know, and I think everybody understands up here, isn't this a quality panel? I mean, did anybody up here? Nobody up here other than maybe Jerry was self-serving. Everybody up here is here because they love this community and they're trying to come up with solutions for this community. Yeah, some of them are getting paid nice salaries to do it, but they're earning it and they're making it work. So essentially, that's the discussion we're having. The discussion's not over. Jerry, let's take some questions.
You know, let me start too, and just say, and just see if anyone wants to jump in. You know, everybody's here because Citrus County has a great quality of life. It's a beautiful place. It's the nature coast. We have an excellent education system. We have great recreational opportunities, and we're small towns. This is a community where people work together to solve problems. They don't always look to government for the answer. They go out and they create nonprofit groups and they do cool things. You know, you look at, remember a couple of years ago, this community built a YMCA. We raised, without government's help, we raised $8.4 million on our own to build a YMCA because we wanted it in our community. You know, we went out and we built a food bank and a food network to help poor people make sure that they have the food that they need. We have a Boys and Girls Club that provides services that are just over the top. We've done all of these things because we have volunteers, we have citizens, and we have business leaders and political leaders that recognize problems and work to find the solutions. We don't want to lose that closeness. We don't want to lose the ability to work together to find solutions. So I throw it out to the group, and please, somebody jump in. You know, how do we protect what makes this community great, at the same time recognizing we've been discovered. We're growing up. You've seen the numbers. We've doubled in size. We've doubled in revenues. It's going to continue to grow. How do we make sure our institutions keep up with that?
Dr. Grillo.
Dennis, I saw your hand, please.
Yeah, thank you once again. Absolutely, the Y is a stellar example of how generous and how wonderful people are here. Just keep your mind open. The only certainty is change. Do you want to do it uncontrolled or controlled fashion? Because it's going to happen. We've got to bring some younger people into this community, and so we might have to change what we think is kind of strange or unusual to adapt, but that's the only way we're going to evolve and evolve well.
So one of the other things that the Y does is, and why they're so successful, is because they foster the people that come there and the needs of the people that come there. In order to get more nurses to come into Citrus County, we need to learn from the past. You know, COVID did a number on nurses. I know most of you maybe not know that because you really shouldn't know that. You shouldn't know what we had to go through to make sure people were safe. But trust me, we lost a lot of nurses, and what they went through has really affected them even to this day. So I think in the same manner that the YMCA fosters everyone that comes in there and cares about them, we need to develop programs for nurses to make sure that they are okay, because they're not. And so moving forward, if you're going to bring in these young nurses, we need to understand there's definitely a generational gap. We don't understand, maybe when you get to be about my age, what that work-life balance priority is to them. And we don't understand that sometimes they get their feelings hurt more, but we're going to lose them to places that don't foster their mental health and don't foster the things that they want, and somebody else in a bigger town will come up with it first. I think that's important as well.
Danielle wanted to say something.
Okay, we'll do Danielle and then down to Ralph here, okay?
I just wanted to make a comment. Traditionally, back to the property appraiser comments, traditional community is about a 70-30% split, so 70% residential. So that's a goal to get to Typically residential draws on a lot more services, so it's costlier. So if you can cost share with the tourism economy and other commercial industrial business community, that's the goal, to keep your costs down as residential folks in the community. So.
Down around.
Yeah, we are a small community, but that doesn't preclude us from getting novel ideas that larger communities may not be able to execute. And we've seen that with the YMCA, and the state, even though they haven't seemed to give us a lot of money, they did give us an extra $1 million to maybe start another facility downtown in Inverness. But novel ideas, particularly combining mental health with education, with animal shelters, with our prison, all those things are important, and all those things will bring people into this area. This area will be a magnet for growth in Florida because of the very reason that Jerry said initially. It started off being the least expensive place to live in our state, and it's still relatively less expensive than most other areas. So it will be a magnet for growth when some of these larger tract developments start putting up rooftops. And I think it's important for people like us to get together and develop those novel ideas that would attract the professionals that are going to be needed, whether they're carpenters, whether they're bricklayers, whether they're physicians, to actually serve that population.
Mr. Dalton, too late now, sir.
You know, new to the election or the politics of all this, you know, I would recommend this right here, the town halls. I think that this hasn't been done like Josh talked about. This is a new idea. I think that what we can do, I know government doesn't like transparency, but we have to do this more. We need to do this more in pockets of the community.
Some government does.
Yeah. But I think that we need to take this show on the road in the different pockets of our community and have this conversation.
The chamber can't fix all these problems. We're not social workers, but we can facilitate. We can be facilitators of discussions like this. Jim, did you have something?
Just a general comment. Don't think we want to lose what we have. There's so many wonderful things about Citrus County, so keep the good and get rid of the bad. I think it starts with leadership from our government. I see a few politicians in the audience, so hopefully we have some ideas that might come. Law and order. I look at the national news and I get literally sick when I see hoodlums taking over cities. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Maybe some new ideas on how we can bring jobs to this community. We have to replace Duke Energy. If I remember correctly, what was it, 60–70% of the tax revenue was generated by Duke Energy?
At one time, you're correct.
Yeah, and then I'm also concerned about what did we do with the uranium that was burned. I don't know if that was ever taken out or if it's safe. A lot of Europeans are very concerned about that, even now. But there's a lot of issues that we could discuss in these forums, and I think we could get some good ideas as a result of it. Different ways to tax. I hate to see taxes continue to go up. I hate to see increases in in insurance and interest rates. There's got to be other ways to create revenue to keep our lifestyle the way it is, but more is not necessarily better. I don't want to see us turn into a Tampa. I would rather see us turn into an affordable community.
So speaking about taxes, I do applaud this board. They are talking, this commission is talking about diversification of the tax burden, so that it's not all on the homeowner, it's not all, it's, what services are you using, and so that discussion's still going on. I don't know if anything will be implemented by the time this budget comes around, but did anybody else have anything? This is about land development, so I would imagine that Mr. Lander would take it. Many existing subdivisions, Pine Ridge, Citrus Springs, Citrus Hills, have thousands of vacant lots available. Will these be prioritized over as yet built subdivisions?
Well, I believe
believe the economy will determine that. So if the infrastructure is already in place, it would be significantly more affordable than starting from scratch and going through the time that it would take to rezone, plat, put the infrastructure in. So I just think the economy would determine that it's more advantageous to build what's already existing.
So that's a marketplace decision that a developer will make, would they go before all the planning commission and all versus building on what's available? Citrus County's ad valorem tax base has just this year recovered from pre-2008 collection amounts. How do we diversify our tax base to help grow better, to help growth better pay for itself? So the board did address impact fees. That helps growth pay for itself, but it doesn't help housing become more affordable. So that's another catch-22. But I personally don't mind, as the chamber CEO, target, paying impact fees to come here. And I don't think anybody in this room minds it. Do you mind? I don't. So I'm glad that they went up in time to capture all the stuff that's going on in that corner. And Craig, you can tell me if I'm wrong. One target is the equivalent of about 150 homes in tax revenue. Is that correct?
I would just limit that to your big box stores, right? So your Home Depots, your Lowe's, your Walmarts, they're all going to be relatively the same, but yes. Because you're talking about, we're going to place a value even on their parking lot or their tangible equipment, and then obviously the real property, so yes.
Did you have something to add to the question?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be complicated, right? Our county commissioners, our city councils have a tough job, and as their taxable values increase, so does the cost of doing business. And so they do have a challenging job, and I wouldn't want it, but God bless you. So
you improve the value of a community when you make stuff. When you make stuff and you sell stuff, you bring money into the community. When you just buy stuff from outside the community and bring it in, not so much. So the point is, like, down to Progress Energy, they make stuff. I'm sorry, they make stuff. They make energy, and they sell energy to people who don't live in Citrus County, and some of that money flows back into Citrus County. What we don't have are enough businesses that make stuff. The employees who make stuff leave our community to do it. So we talk about the development of the Holder site, of the industrial site. The county and the city of Inverness are trying to develop the airport industrial site. And you ask the question, what does that mean to me? Why should I care about that? Well, you should care about it because it produces tax revenue that supports the good things we do, but it doesn't put a demand on services for more spending. The new industry doesn't put anybody in school. It doesn't have an impact on the cost of education. Now, some of their workers will bring in kids, but hopefully we're hiring people locally who already have kids. Stan's premise was that if we could develop businesses and industries that made stuff that we sold to the outside, we would be increasing the net worth of our community. And we'd have more dollars to deal with. Industry doesn't they make some demands. They need sewer, they need water, they need roads, they need the infrastructure in place to do what they do. But when they provide jobs and manufacture things, that produces revenue for the community as a whole without a demand on services. Our problem is, as the percent of residential to the total increases, what you have are lots of our homes are out of balance. Yeah, we all complain about how high our taxes are, but there are many households in Citrus County where you demand a much higher cost of services than you pay in your taxes. So you're out of balance. You have other people that are the other way. They'll pay a $5,000 tax bill and won't make a lot of demands. But we, because we go back to what I mentioned in the beginning, in the 60s and 70s, we advertised ourselves as the least expensive place in Florida to retire. People came and they paid very, very low tax dollars. Can you imagine paying $400 in taxes a year and you have 3 kids in the public school system? How is that going to work? There's no way you're paying for the services that you're demanding. So that's one of the reasons why the mix of housing has to change. We have to have low-income housing for young people and for workers starting out. But at the same time, we have to have really nice homes that cost a lot of money, so you can build a lot and you can pay a higher level of taxes that makes up for a lot of those homes where you're not paying enough taxes. It's a balance, and I know the people sitting in this room, I know what, we're worried about traffic. We're worried about traffic lights, we're worried about getting around, we're worried about water and parks and the quality of our education and the quality of our healthcare. All of those things are critically important to us. And if there's one thing that came out tonight is there is no simple solution to this. It is not, there's no easy answer to solve all the dilemmas that we face. But what you do have, you got a lot of really good people who are involved in this. We got strong elected officials who really want to find these solutions. So, what we pledge to do as a Chamber of Commerce is we're going to do more of these conversations. We're going to dig deeper into some specific issues, and we're going to see if we can find solutions. I'll stop yakking.
Well, what Jerry just said, it sounds like enough you should write a column or something about this. But one of the things I want to do as a start is to reassure our citizens there are really bright, dedicated people working on this stuff. There really is. We think about it every day. From the moment we wake up to the time we go to bed, some of us lay in bed thinking about this stuff. The politicians take a lot of heat, but man, they're working. I haven't seen a board, and I've served on a previous board, that been asking the tough questions that this board's asking. I mean, they're really digging into this issue. So I think we should all just take a deep breath, but we want to hear solutions. And I'm going to give 2 quick questions, and then we're going to turn it over to our closer. How can we ask our students, I guess this would go to you, student was mentioned, what projects and developments they want to see?
So one of the pieces that we have in place right now, we have what we call a superintendent's council, and we meet with those students once a month, and we ask those tough questions to them about what do they see, what do they want in the future. So that's a great opportunity for us to talk to the students about what are they looking for and how can we help support them. It's something that we offer each month to all of our students.
Okay, and I agree with Jerry. We will pledge to continue this conversation. I don't know what format it's going to look like, but maybe next one will be solution-based. Jerry, you want to introduce our closer?
I do. Our closer tonight, and we're really happy he took the time out to come and talk to you. He is our new county administrator, Steve Howard. He's been here more than a year now. But Steve comes to us with a lot of experience and a lot of good strategic ideas on how the community should move forward. So with that, let's welcome Steve out, please.
I'm Southern Baptist. I grew up that way. This week we're proud of me as an offering. Maybe below the tax base here, we can do that. Another small note I heard about Hobby Lobby. A lot of people are excited about that. I've heard about Chick-fil-A. My daughter went to Chuck E. Cheese. She's 5 now. So she'll be excited about that. But I can tell you that we're working around the clock. What I'll tell you, there's 2 things that they talked about tonight. There's a difference between growth and development. Growth is quantitative. So it needs numbers and things like that. But if we do growth the right way, it leads to a better quality of life. So that's what we should make decisions every day. I put this up here. I'm not going to go into all this. You've been here a long time. But all 4 of these things should happen. Personal livability, environmental stewardship, economic opportunity, community building. Those are really building blocks when we make a decision every day that we're doing with the county, and our board's committed to that. So this is challenging things. It's across the nation. I go back and forth. I'm a Florida native. I go back to where my mom's at a few hours from here. Same issues are facing around the clock. We have a chance to get it right. I knew how to get here tonight because I've been here before, but if you get your GPS, if you're going somewhere around the county or you're going on vacation, you got to put that in there and tell it where you want to go. Sometimes it's going to be routing, things like that. We have an opportunity at this county to tell it where you want it to go. Growth is going to happen. You can't put a border up here in this county because you can't do that. People are going to come. People cause growth. That happens. But we have an opportunity, I think, to get this thing right and to do that. So we're committed to that. I know my administration, we're bringing on people. Tourism, talked about that today. As a result of tourism, one of our tourists that was here, I recruited for economic development. So actually, we're getting people that actually want to be part of this community. So that's all important. So these are good things. I'm committed to doing more of these. I love these things. I like to interact. I like to talk too much sometimes. But we got to know we're doing a good job and we're doing a bad job. So we got to do this together. So it's not unique to what's going on in the country. So I wish we could just say no one else can come in. That doesn't happen. I go around the community and a lot of these developments, like Eric said, from the 80s that aren't built out yet. But what an opportunity, I think, if we get this right with our due partners. We're working real close with them, economic development. We're working on a project together, which is a game changer. I always say, what's the difference? I work with the Secretary of Commerce and others in past positions and stuff like that. And I would tell you, what's the difference between career jobs and hobby jobs? And they'll say you want fries with that. So we need all types of jobs, but we need the high-tech jobs and things like that, opportunities. I think we can do that as a community because you can't do this on the back of residential. It doesn't pay the bills. We talked about that. You can't do that. The school system, I worked for Sheriff Grady Judd, you know that. I was part of his original cabinet member. Then brought me on, became sheriff. And I will tell you that, today, if you go home today, anybody have kids in the audience, grandkids? We have some folks that have that. If you go home today and someone stole in your house, what are you going to do? The first thing you're going to do is call law enforcement. We have a great person in the back there, law enforcement. That's what happens every day in this community. They're stealing the children in other states. They're taking them there after you do all the educational. So we have an opportunity for the next generation to make sure we're doing something here that's good and appropriate. But again, we're going to check all those boxes. Personal livability, talk about nurses and things like that. When they want to feel safe, environmental stewardship. You've made a tremendous commitment to this county already. With that, I applaud you for that. But we can do that with developers and hold them accountable to make sure we can do that too. We check out economic opportunity. People without a vision, I talked about that yesterday with affordable housing, will perish. So you gotta have a vision, but you gotta execute. And I think that's the difference between actually getting results and doing that. Again, at the end of the day, community, that's what we're doing here today. Community building, to make sure you have a seat at the table. If you don't get to the table, you don't get the meal, you get the crumbs. Get to the table. We need to hear from you to make sure this is your community. You have an opportunity to do something amazing and to get it right. I'm gonna leave this with you. The last quote here, I love quotes. I'm going to leave this with you today. Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. Progress is going to happen, whether you want it to or not. Things are going to happen. You talked about Jerry when he said he first got here, what that looks like. 10 years from now, it's going to be different than that. It's going to happen. But what an opportunity to actually say, what is our destination? What do you want it to be and have input into it? We can do so amazing things. I'm confident that Citrus best days lie ahead. God bless each of you, and may God continue to bless Citrus County.
Everybody